On being you, the fifth principle, we affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and society at large.
Rejoice in love we know and share, in love and beauty everywhere. Rejoice in truth that makes us free, and in the good that yet shall be.
Opening words.
There is a voice inside of you that whispers all day long. I feel that this is right for me. I know that this is wrong. No teacher, preacher, parent, friend, or wise man can decide what's right for you. Just listen to the voice that speaks inside.
The star of truth but dimly shines behind the veiling clouds of night, but every searching eye divines some partial glimmer of its light. The certainty for which we crave, no mortal ones can ever know. Uncharted waters we must brave, and face whatever winds may blow. Though for safe harbor we may long, we must not let our courage fail. And though the winds of doubt blow strong, upon the trackless ocean sail. From honest doubt we shall not flee, nor fetter the inquiring mind. For where the hearts of all are free, a truer faith we there shall find.
The Transitional Words. The decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When the government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a full adult human responsible for her own choices. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Associate Justice, U.S. Supreme Court, 1993 to 2020.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Terre Haute's virtual campus, otherwise known as my living room, for this evening. I am Sarah Clarke. I am a member at large with the board of directors for the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I am also a mental health professional. That doesn't really impact the talk today, but it's important information, I guess, maybe. And I have been tasked today, and I hope to just barely scratch the surface on the vast and complicated topic of Roe versus Wade. So first and foremost, thank you to Lisa and Julie for trusting me in discussing this topic. Again, vast and complicated topic. Didn't quite realize that initially when I agreed to it, but here we are. And before I continue with the talk, I want to just, I guess, express too that my camera's over here, my face is right here, my computer's over here. You probably see it in the reflection of my glasses, so I apologize if I'm sort of all over the place. And I want to make a quick disclaimer that the viewpoints that I share with you today do not necessarily reflect the general viewpoints of the congregation as a whole, or any of its specific members, or even Unitarian Universalism as a whole. These thoughts are mine, and briefly the thoughts of some people in my inner circle. And then there are potential that everybody's thoughts change over time, and hopefully this ages well. And then also, while I was born a female and identify as a woman, this does not inherently make me an expert historian on Roe versus Wade, or an expert in the medical realm of what abortion, the context of abortion. So, start with that. Okay. To move on, we're going to, start the main conversation with just a little bit of history to Roe versus Wade. And by little bit, I mean little bit. There are decades and decades of historical records and legal precedents and all this stuff that I cannot provide you in a 20-minute segment. So, to start with, Norma McCorvey went by the legal pseudonym of Jane Roe. She was a woman who lived in Texas. She had 2 prior children, was pregnant with her 3rd, and made the choice, her personal choice, to decide that she did not want to be pregnant. She did not want to carry that child to full term. She was satisfied with having 2 children. So she did the ordinary, everyday task of taking on an entire state like Texas to get that right to do that. She wanted a safe, legal, medical abortion, could not do that, and fought for her right to do that. As the court process is very slow, courts go back and forth through appellate courts and judicial reviews and all of this stuff, and so it finally got to the Supreme Court in 1973. And by that time, spoiler alert, she did have that 3rd child. Again, legal processes are slow, but that important bit of information that the legal process was slow and she did have that child actually informs some of the Supreme Court's decision, and you can get the full decision, quick Google search, you can find that. But anyway, so the court ruled in Miss Norma's favor, and what they decided was that the Constitution of the United States protects a woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion without excessive government restriction. There have been several retellings of what excessive government restriction means over the years. And since 1973, there have been some redefining of some portions of that legal precedent and that original decision. But they have continued to guarantee access to legal, safe medical abortions in the United States. And that little bit about the courts being slow, that generally speaking, the Supreme Court would have rendered the lawsuit moot because it no longer was applicable to Miss Norma. She had her child, and therefore there was no argument about whether she was going to have an abortion or not. And what's interesting is that the Supreme Court ended up sort of overlooking that moot point and made the executive decision that women kind of can get pregnant more than once, and so this is something we should probably hear because the defendant, Miss Norma, has the potential to be pregnant in the future, and so this argument can come up in the future. So that's actually also a fun little bit of information about that court process. So again, that is just the slightest, tiniest little bit of a blurb of the general overview of the history of Roe versus Wade. And so I am a big fan of science and facts and information, and so I wanted to look up some statistics about abortion in the United States. And I just want to say it's a wonderful time to be interested in information, because it's at your fingertips. It's here on the iPad, it's on the computer, it's on your phone, just at your fingertips. There's information everywhere. So with that said, for every little good bit of information that you may find out there, there's a whole sea of bad information, and it is very challenging to sift through some of that bad information. And so while I will have Lisa include some links on the blurb that will be down here, the show notes, if you will, I'll provide links to where I've gotten this information from. But I welcome anyone watching this at any point in the future to comment any kind of correction, insights, or alternative locations to find better information, more better information. That way anyone listening to this in the future has the benefit of either the most up-to-date knowledge or better information that I'm providing you right now. So in trying to find some statistics about abortion in the United States, I have come to learn that the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, has an abortion surveillance system. That's an incredibly unfortunate acronym, but an abortion surveillance system. This system is voluntary for states to report to. This is an easily accessed set of data on the CDC website, and again, link below. And in an ironic twist, this is fun information, Texas actually tops the charts for abortions conducted every year. And I went back a decade, and each one of those decades, the highest number of abortions in a state were Texas. So it comes full circle, doesn't it? And then total for yearly average for abortions performed in the United States, there are about 620,000 abortions and 630,000 abortions that are done every single year. And an unfortunate trend is that abortion rates are trending higher recently. I can't give you insights on why that is, they just are. Somebody who might comment below may have better information though. So if you're anything like me, that number probably sounded a little big. That sounded like a lot of abortions. And so I wanted to find some context to that number. So there were reported to the ASS, 629,898 abortions reported in 2019. In 2019 as well, there were 973,315 patients who filled one or more prescriptions to the generic version of Viagra. That is one drug, one generic version. 973,315. And it is estimated that there are approximately 500,000 vasectomies performed every year in the United States. And there are approximately 700,000 tubal ligations, or getting your tubes tied, performed per year in the United States. About half of these tubal ligations are done postpartum, so a woman gives birth and then the doctors go in and tie her tubes and call it a day, a one and done deal. And each year there are about 6.1 million pregnancies. And so when you do the math there, 6.1 million pregnancies to 629,000 abortions, it is hovering around the 10% mark. So of those 6.1 million pregnancies, not necessarily births too, by the way, it's pregnancies, not births, that 50% of them are unplanned. Unplanned does not mean unwanted, it just means surprise. And of those 50% that are unplanned pregnancies, that 50% of those are birth control failures. Birth control failures account for 50% of the unwanted pregnancies. So, do the math, that is about 1.5 million birth control failures every year. And I think that's a really important thing to stress, that women and their partners are taking precautions, and sometimes accidents happen. That's a lot of tubal ligations. That's a lot of vasectomies, and that's a lot of accidents. It's also a lot of Viagra. So, and so it's important to stress that women and their partners are taking precautions. Sometimes accidents happen, and then we know that the only 100% effective birth control method is wearing socks with sandals. Everything else has a level of not working. And so that's the statistics, at least scratch the surface statistics. And again, see below for the links. Okay, so for this next section, I want to briefly go through some of the thoughts of other people besides myself. I put a Facebook post out wondering what people's thoughts on Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decision, abortion in general. And so these are voluntary respondents to that Facebook post. And so they're no way a comprehensive list of thoughts on Roe versus Wade, or even all that diverse. They're all my friends. That's not necessarily of a diverse set of thoughts. So I'm not going to read every single one of them. I don't think I have time to do that, but I want to highlight some things that people have said. So this first quote says that it is a medical freedom and bodily autonomy issue. People with male genitalia are not required to have a part of their body regulated by the government or the law. Abortions have been around for thousands of years, and Roe versus Wade ensures that people have the choice to a safe medical procedure instead of dying from a procedure that is nobody's business but that individual's. And that bit about people with male genitalia are not required to have part of their body regulated by the government. Ruth Bader Ginsburg once did an interview and said that she won some pretty significant legal decisions based on the argument that laws should govern all people and not just a certain subset of people, that when laws are targeted to that certain subset of people, they're actually discriminatory. And so that was a legal play out for her, and she would agree with this. This next one, I believe that a woman should have the right to choose for herself. My issue is that if a woman keeps getting pregnant and keeps getting abortions to deal with it, there should be some sort of accountability. And so I looked into this to get a little bit more background information, in that actually about 45% of people who got abortions have had one in the past. And not that I want to put assumptions into this particular respondent's thoughts, but a lot of people believe that there are taxpayer dollars that go to abortion services. You go to a federally qualified health center or a place like Planned Parenthood, those places receive federal taxpayer dollars for certain services. None of those taxpayer dollars go to abortion services. That they'll go to cancer screens or wellness checks or things like that, but no government dollars go to abortions. That any free or reduced cost abortion services are private donations. And so if abortions are sort of the ER visit for pregnancy, then of course we want to take preventative measures to make sure people are staying out of the ER, not needing abortions. And I really like this next comment, that just one little bit of it here, that I am the beneficiary of not being aborted by a single mother, not because of the law, but she made a personal choice. I am also the beneficiary of aborting an unwanted pregnancy. I was 21 and my girlfriend was 20. It wasn't easy, but it was the right choice for us. Thank you for that level of disclosure. This next one, a friend of mine told the story of her sister who was taking a medicine that would harm a fetus if she got pregnant. She did get pregnant by mistake. She wanted and deserved an abortion. No questions asked. Women are smart and they know what's best. And I do think that it's an important line of thinking to say, is this adult woman capable of making an appropriate medical decision for herself? And I also understand that, on the other side of that, who gets to stand up for the fetus and stuff like that. I understand that argument. And this one is from a former coworker of mine. She says, as well as I do from working in the prison system, because yes, I work in a prison system, that children born to women who don't want them or otherwise unable or unwilling to care for them are at a higher risk for bad outcomes and become a strain on society. Some argue women should have taken precautions in the first place, but mistakes happen. And at the end of the day, if a woman is pregnant but knows she cannot or will not provide a decent life for a child, in my opinion, she should be able to make the decision to abort. In some cases, it's probably the most humane decision she could make. And that brings up this idea of a quality of life versus a quantity of life. And this next one I really very much appreciate. I appreciate getting the viewpoints from some religious folks, because that's, a main part of this argument, isn't it? So this one friend of mine says, I hate abortion. However, I think the whole pro-life thing is a religious thing. So I think there needs to be an argument of separation of church and state regarding the issue. I am Roman Catholic. Abortion is off limits for us. However, this is not a clearly defined tenet or precept of other religions. That said, I believe that abortion is the product of systemic oppression against women. It's still wrong, however, because it's the product of the woman continuing to bear the burden of reproduction in an inequitable manner. I think it's become a necessary evil, too, for women again to gain some equality. It's a necessary evil. Let me continue here. Sorry about that. I had a technical glitch. But she said it's a necessary evil. Women are not evil. It's survival. And I appreciate that she has from what I know of her, a very devout Roman Catholic, the recognition that her religion informs her beliefs about abortion, but that her religion doesn't necessarily inform other people's beliefs about abortion. So, and then this next one, there are so many reasons why a person would want or need an abortion, and no one should be questioning her decision. Incest, rape, fetal viability, poverty, age, mental health, maternal health, infidelity, accidental, and absolute hate for children are all valid reasons, and not one person, but that pregnant person's opinion should matter. I will never have one, but if I had to travel to Canada to get my daughter one because it becomes illegal here, I would. That would also mean that the poor would be subjected to forced pregnancy or worse, botched back alley abortions or suicide. And I think that sometimes that's what comes off when states reduce access to abortion services to a very finite, very few places, that it very much disadvantages the poor, and having an unwanted pregnancy makes people even more poor. Children are expensive. And then there are lots of sentiments about it's 2022 and I can't believe I'm still having to fight for these things, and that it's a woman's right, they should choose. And so, I knew when I posted that on Facebook that when I got people's opinions, I was essentially entering an echo chamber of my same thoughts and feelings. They're my Facebook friends. They're my friends for a reason. And so it's sort of a birds of a feather Facebook together sort of thing. And so except for a few things here and there, I was right. Generally speaking, what I heard was the same thoughts that I have. But I know that we all need to watch out for things like confirmation bias, me going, I'm right because look at all these other people telling me I'm right. And so I knew that. And this last statement I read with permission from my very good friend Kelly. Kelly and I are in many ways very opposite people. She is very Christian, and I'm a humanist. And I intentionally sought out her opinions because what I love about Kelly is that when I speak with her, and we've had lots of conversations about fairly controversial topics, that she is able to express her viewpoints in a very intelligent way and convey to me how her religion informs her thinking and her beliefs. And so while there's a lot of what Kelly says that I don't agree with, I think that everybody has a right to have a seat at the table when we're discussing these things, because it's not just me that these laws affect, it's everybody or every woman that these laws affect. And so I'm going to read you Kelly's sentiments, and I'm going to read them, word for word. And so, okay, she says, okay, to start, I'm against abortion. That wasn't news to me, Kelly, but this stems from my personal belief as a Christ follower and a believer in the truth of the Bible. I believe God created all life for a purpose, regardless of how that life was conceived. I do not believe that any life is accidental or unplanned in God's eyes, though it may be viewed that way in our human eyes. I also believe that rape, incest, and sexual relations outside of God's design for marriage are wrong. While the way that life was conceived may be out of hurt, abuse, betrayal, that life is still no accident to God. I believe that every person is created in the image of God, and when I look at others, I can see him. And she goes on to say, yes, even you, my sweet friend. And if I believe that life begins at conception, I believe that taking that life is murder. If I am to take a pro-life stance, I am also helping in connecting mothers and families to resources that they need. I am pro-helping teen mothers, or any mother, find alternative solutions. I am pro-helping mothers whose health is at risk find affordable medical help. I am pro-relationship counseling and helping couples heal from the scare, of an unplanned pregnancy. I am pro-help your neighbor. The idea that we are not in this life alone and the power that comes from helping one another in time of need. I know many of these issues raise other issues, affordable health care and availability of services, etc. So that's a topic for another time. She goes on to finally say, I never want to judge somebody for their previous decisions. I cannot imagine being ostracized from my family for an unplanned pregnancy, that I am left homeless or left to fend for myself. I cannot imagine not having access to the medical care that I need, let alone the care for the child. I imagine when someone has made this choice, it's often made with deep fear, anguish, and despair. I also know the feelings of regret, shame, and embarrassment, but also the forgiveness and healing that can come with a relationship with Jesus. When we seek forgiveness in Jesus for our sins committed, we are forgiven and can move forward in life without shame. I have heard speakers reference studies that have been done on percentages of women who, years after an abortion, now view it as murder. I would need to look up those for myself for a better reference. It would be interesting to hear from women who have experienced abortion and to know their rights or their thoughts on how and how that experience shaped them. I am aware too of a friend of mine who had an abortion in the past, and she very much regrets that decision. I don't think that her regret of that decision is not everybody is going to have the same level of regret, I believe. And so Kelly and I both work in mental health, and while again there are many things that she says that I just don't agree with, the primary themes that I hear there are things like love and humanity and connection and openness. And I think as Unitarian Universalists, I think we all can agree that love thy neighbor makes better communities. Finding connection and relationships with others makes better humans. And having openness to help others without going too deep, these issues of affordable health care, availability of services like childcare and other social services are absolutely the same conversation that we're having right now. They belong in this conversation. And so going back to a previous comment about the systemic oppression of women, that we are in the midst of a horrible crisis of childcare. Mothers often brunt the majority of the responsibility of that childcare, and women have left the workforce in droves since COVID. Families can't find consistent childcare. Every couple of weeks, kids are sent home because they have a fever, or every couple of weeks, the whole place is shut down. And remote learning at school is absolutely a luxury that assumes that all families can afford to have a caregiver at home. And I cannot recall the origin of this quote whatsoever, but it essentially goes, intelligence is handed out equally, but opportunity is not. And so we're sort of on the cusp of history again right now, that the Supreme Court is leaning very heavily to a conservative side. And so there's a lot of suggestion that, the likelihood is that Roe will be overturned. And that has some really wide implications, not just for the children that are born, but the families that they're born into. And I would love a world where Kelly is right that abortion doesn't have to be an option, because there are other things in place that can make that better. For me and my personal views, that 100% starts with this idea of comprehensive sex education, and that we need to be teaching our citizens, our little citizens, what things like consent, what does consent mean, and when is an appropriate time to seek consent from another person, and that there should be affordable birth control methods and available, and the accessibility of those things needs to increase. There are other countries that birth control is something that you can sort of go to the pharmacist and say, hey, I need that, and they'll give it to you. Not just like condoms, but hormonal birth controls. And at the end of the day, I would really hope that we as a society and as a nation start to value the other person. What is this other person going through? Because I have never experienced an abortion, and I am a woman and I have that, ability to get pregnant, but my personal experiences are not the same as somebody else's personal experiences. And so laws aren't just there for me, they're there for everybody. And I have to look outside of myself to see what this law or what this thing that I'm doing or trying to get done may do to my neighbor, the person around me. And so, again, while I might have very different views than my good friend Kelly, that I think we both can agree, and I hope we all can agree, that at the core, love thy neighbor, make sure that we're taking care of one another, so that way we don't have to use these certain services like abortion. Let's prevent them before they need to be used. But there's only so much prevention can do. There will be times where women are going to need that abortion. So again, this was in no way a comprehensive discussion about, or one-sided discussion about Roe versus Wade, and I apologize if any of it seemed kind of rambly. I have a lot of strong opinions about women's rights in general, but again, I understand that that's not everybody's opinion, or my opinions are not reflective of everybody else's opinion. And so again, I invite anyone watching this to please comment below on what your thoughts are about abortion rights, women's reproductive health, Roe versus Wade specifically, or this upcoming Supreme Court decision. I also ask that when you comment below that we just maintain a respectful space for everybody. Thank you so much. So to respond to Kelly's quote, there are lots of things that she says that I just don't agree with. But I do hear some primary themes about love, humanity, connection, and openness. And as a Unitarian Universalist, I think that we can agree that things like love thy neighbor absolutely make better communities. And, our first two principles of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and then justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. That, there is a quote, I cannot quite remember who said it or what its exact wording is, but it goes, intelligence is handed out equally, but opportunity is not. And so, having or our communities get better about, access to an opportunity to receive certain services like childcare, like different social services like food and housing assistance and everything, that, when we can take people out of poverty, things like abortion aren't going to be needed anymore. That when people have those core needs, those fundamental needs of a safe place and clean water and good food to eat, that we make smarter citizens and more citizens that are more available to be healthier. And so, going back to a previous comment about women, the systemic oppression of women, that we are 100% in the midst of a crisis of childcare, that, COVID has really interrupted women's lives. And part of that is that women take the brunt of childcare duties, and they have left the workforce in droves because of COVID. And with also remote learning at school is a luxury that assumes that all families can afford to have a caregiver at home, and that's just not the case. And this is such a complicated topic with a complicated web of systems that go into it. It's not just the simple right to abortion, but it's how do we prevent those things, and how do we keep medical procedures safe for everybody and access to those medical procedures safe. Again, my personal belief is that there shouldn't be a law around women's bodies because there are no laws around men's bodies. But in my decision to make a medical choice for myself is my decision and not the government's decision. I understand that's not the thought of everybody. And so, again, part of the Unitarian Universalist principles is the democratic process in our congregation and society as a whole. And if I don't like how that democratic process is working, then I absolutely have to be involved in it to make sure that my voice is heard. And so this is my little plug for everybody that if you don't like the laws of the world that you live in, get active. Make sure you're voting and registering to vote, and making sure your friends around you are voting, because the more of our input that we can put into that system, the more comprehensive our laws are going to be for us. And so that's all my thoughts for today. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on, and I hope it all made sense and everything. I also want to say the unfortunate reality is that our congregation is going to be virtual through February too. And so, stay at home, make sure you're staying safe and healthy, and get your vaccines and all that good stuff. And again, anybody's thoughts, please post below, comment, let me know what your thoughts are and what your opinions on the matter are, because again, we all have a seat at the table and our voices deserve to be heard. Thank you.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is the answer. A child is born among us, and we feel a special glow. We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear imagination freely running wild. We dedicate our minds and hearts to the spirit of this child, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a time to be together. And with the grace of age, we share the wonder of youth, and we believe that growing is the answer. Our lives are full of wonder, and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die, and when our lives are done, the memories we shared with friends, they will linger on and on. And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow, we have the gift to believe that peace within our living is the answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is the answer.
The closing words. It is unthinkable to allow complete strangers, whether individually or collectively as state legislators or others in government, to make such personal decisions for someone else. Sarah Weddington, winning attorney for Jane Roe, in Roe versus Wade.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace, Know that you are loved and that your life is sacred.